right, guys, got the 05 back in the garage today. So what I'm dealing with today is I have a leaky transmission pan, and that's because I put in a gasket that is not the OEM one. So I found a lot of problems on these trucks come from especially me trying to go the cheap route and put a part in that is not the OEM, and then you end up buying the OEM part and putting it back in anyway. So since I'm going to be down there, I'm going to have the pan off, basically doing a service fill on it, and then I'm also going to remove one of the transmission cooler lines and do a poor man's transmission flush on it, which I'll show you guys. So I have all my fluids over here. The complete fill on the 48RE takes anywhere from 15 to 17 quarts. So I've got my 15 here, got an extra 2 there, and then I have these 5 that I'm going to use for the actual flushing, and might even go into those other 2. But let's get to it. So here's some stuff that I use to make things just a little bit easier on yourself. First of all, get yourself a good set of coveralls if you're going under there, unless you like buying new clothes. A good quality headlamp that's going to last for a while. This one doesn't last quite as long as I wish it did, but it's a Phoenix. I think I got it for like 60 bucks on Amazon. Disposable gloves are key, and then a nice box of disposable rags there will go a long ways towards keeping your work site and your body clean and keep those fluids off of you. Okay, so we're down under the truck here, looking at the transmission pan. Another nice to have is if you ever get this pan off, take the time and drill a hole, weld a nut on there, and then put a drain plug in. It'll make your life so much easier when it comes time to change the fluid or the filters in here. Quarts out of that. I'm going to plug it up here because we don't need to be completely empty to take the pan off. And when I did this last time, I used some Loctite thread sealant on that, and it really did a nice job of sealing it up. So we'll move on to actually pulling the pan off here. We'll get this fluid out of the way. All right, pan's coming off. Basically, the pan should be relatively clean. You want to get down in these grooves in here and everything, because that's where the gunk really tends to kind of coagulate. And that looks pretty good. So we'll get the new gasket and get it put back up. Basically, I'm just going to get a couple of these started, and then we'll clean up around the outsides here so I can get under there nice and clean and get the rest of them in. Okay, so I got the torque wrench out here. And 15 foot-pounds is the torque spec that I was able to find on the Google machine. And I'm just being a little particular right now, but I'm gonna just try and clean this up a little bit since I'm here. Plus it'll make it a little easier to determine if we have a leak, or you know where it's leaking from if it starts up on me again. So in previous attempts, I tried that Permatex spray-on goop that makes your gaskets extra tacky, and this ATF4 just ate right through it. There was nothing left of that stuff, and it leaked almost immediately. Okay. So I'm just going to skip around a little bit here. Okay, so we're all torqued, and the last thing I want to do here is get some thread sealant on that drain plug. All right, so we're all buttoned up down here. I got that fluid cleaned up. So the next step is we're going to move on to the flush portion. So draining the fluid only got what's in the pan. There's still, I don't know, maybe anywhere from 3 or 5, 7 quarts of fluid in the torque converter in here that you can't really get unless you remove the torque converter. And even pulling a torque converter out and trying to get it drained is next to an impossible task. I think to really drain it, you either have to put a straw down in it or cut it in half. So basically we're trying to flush that, and then what's in the coolers. So right up here, you can see that guy is the engine coolant to transmission fluid heat exchanger. That's the first stop from the transmission for hot fluid. Then it continues out and goes to the front of the truck with the air to transmission fluid heat exchanger. We're not going to be able to get that because it has a thermostatic valve in there, so the fluid has to be hot for that thing to circulate, but that's probably only holding about a quart, if that, so I'm just going to leave that one. Basically, this is the return line. This is the pressure line up here. That's hot fluid going away from the transmission in this line, returns cool in this one, and I think that's the lube circuit, so it goes to all the rotating parts in there to keep things cool and lubricated. Basically, we're going to unscrew this and just start and stop the truck and refill the pan. So we're going to put clean fluid in the pan while this is disconnected, start it up and allow it to pump through the transmission into the bucket, and the goal is to do that until we see clean fluid appear in this, coming out of this line. Okay, so I already got this loosened up, and you can see fluid is starting to drip out of here, so I got to put something down here to catch that fluid. So this thing was a bit of a knuckle buster here. I smacked my hand on that four-wheel drive linkage, and you can see it ripped a hole in my glove, but that's how these things go. All right. So there we go. Now I'm going to see if I can get a tube in there to direct this down into a bucket or something. Okay, here's what I came up with. I couldn't find a tube to go in or over the cooler line. So basically have it going into an ABS fitting and then another one kind of angling down, which will hopefully create a nice drip out of here. We'll see what really happens though. Okay, so next step, we gotta get rid of the dipstick, put a nice clean funnel in there, and replace what we already took out of the pan. So these guys use ATF plus 4. Took 4 out, we're gonna put 4 back in. All right, so now it's just a slow process of flush fill until you get clean fluid out of that fitting there. So we'll get started on it and see what happens. That stuff came out of there way faster than I thought it would, but it wasn't unmanageable, so that was kind of cool to see. And then as we repeat, we'll see that fluid clean up as all the old fluid gets cycled out of the torque converter and that engine coolant to transmission fluid heat exchanger. So one other thing, I don't know if this will work for everyone in park. Some of you guys might need to shift it into neutral. I have a Transgo shift kit installed, which is supposed to allow fluid circulation in park. I never tried it before I put that kit in, so I don't know if that's actually accurate, but if you find that no fluid is circulating, just throw it in neutral. Make sure you have your parking brake on, your wheels chopped first, of course. Okay, just cleaned out the pan, so we'll go for round 2 here. All right, that is working amazingly well so far. A little bit messier than I wanted, but given my limitation on like hose to select from here, I think I'm happy with that. So I've already filled it and dumped the pan. We'll do this a couple more times, and hopefully that should get that fluid to be nice and clear. I think I already started to notice a difference on the color of it. It's a lot less dark now, but it's still got a ways to go. All right, this should be the last one. I'm down to my last gallon of fluid, so I'll pump this one out, and then I'm going to plug it back up and refill it, and we should be good to put it back in service. All right, I don't know if you can tell on the video, but there's a night and day difference between the color of the fluid now versus when I first started. It was really dark. It looked like motor oil. Now you can really see the red in it. So I think we've pretty much flushed out the torque converter and that fluid exchanger. So I think we're ready to put this thing back together. Let's fire the truck up and see what it does with it running. So I'm sure you probably noticed on the jugs there, the first set I was using Valvoline, and then this last set is actual Mopar ATF plus 4, but both of them you'll notice say synthetic on them. All right, let's leave that for a little bit. So I have seen some guys on the forums say, oh yeah, I switched over to full synthetic in the transmission. ATF plus 4, unless I'm reading the jug wrong, is full synthetic. So to really a beefy fluid that can take a lot of heat. And I know 48RE gets a bad rap from failures, and a lot of that is, you know, failures from guys putting more horsepower through it than should be without putting a adequate build on it. But there are some, you know, genuine failures on these things. But just, you know, rest assured that these things can take a lot more heat than people think with that fluid. You know, if you're out on the highway, it should be cruising, you know, around 180. So I'd say 180 to 200 for transmission fluid temperature. If it's in lockup, like you're running fourth gear down the highway. If you're in city driving, it can creep up to 220, 230. In stock tuning, the fan will come on around 230 or so, and it'll start to ramp up. By the time you hit 250, the fan should be on full speed. And I believe the check engine light, or I'm sorry, the transmission overheat light is programmed to come on at 260 degrees. So that's a little bit hotter than I like to see it. I'm comfortable with this thing getting up to about 240, 245 maybe if you're towing up a hill or you know, stop and go traffic. But if it goes higher than that, then I definitely wouldn't try and push it. I would definitely try and let it cool down at that point. But just so you know, there's some transmission numbers that are not entirely widely known out there. All right, that looked pretty full. I'm going to take it out, give it a test drive. I'll check it again once that dipstick tube drains out a little bit. If needs be, I can take a little bit out. No big deal. So anyway, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please go ahead and hit the subscribe, notify, like, super thanks, all that good stuff. Had fun making this. I hope you guys find it useful, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.